The old mirror in the cramped dressing room reflected Elena Torres in her ivory wedding dress, but all she saw was a stranger staring back. Her eyes were sunken, lips tight, marked by sleepless nights and muffled sobs. She didn't recognize herself anymore. Not Elena, the woman who once loved clay, who found peace in the kiln and sunlight streaming through her pottery studio. The woman in the mirror was no longer an artist, just a bride being offered, a transaction in someone else's game. Outside the door, her mother's voice called out, impatient and clipped. "It's time, Elena. Don't ruin this. This marriage is the best thing for all of us." Best for whom? Elena wondered, her fingers trembling as they touched the faint bruise beneath the makeup on her left cheek. A gift from Victor Silva, the fiancé her family praised as the perfect man, the man who had slammed her phone to the floor because of a message from an old classmate, the man who once gripped her wrist until it bruised, simply because she didn't want to attend one of his family dinners. Memories came in blurred flashes, Victor's controlling gaze, sweet apologies after each outburst, her mother's constant mantra, "Men are like that. As long as he provides, you'll be fine." But Elena knew better. She knew Victor was a golden cage, and today, if she walked out of this room, she'd never be free again. She looked up at the cross on the wall, torn. Then came a quiet clarity, like a whisper from her own soul. God didn't intend for me to live like this. No one should have to live like this. Elena stepped toward the tiny window at the back of the room. Outside was a narrow alley, no more than 2 meters below. She kicked off her white heels, let them fall first, and then climbed onto the windowsill. It wasn't far, but far enough to change everything. The dress tangled around her legs, but she didn't stop. Her heart pounded wildly, but her hands were steady now. And then she jumped. Her feet hit the ground hard, pain shooting up her legs, but she didn't hesitate. With her torn gown dragging behind her, Elena ran not just from a church, but from a life that never belonged to her. Elena ran through alleyways she once knew by heart, now twisted and unfamiliar, lined with shadows that felt like threats. Her wedding dress dragged through the dust, bare feet scraped by loose gravel. But she didn't stop. Each footstep was a refusal to be arranged, packaged, erased from her own life. At the gas station where she and her best friend Sophia had planned everything, Elena found the prepaid phone hidden inside the mailbox, just as promised. Gasping for air, she opened the Ride app and entered the first destination that came to mind. A mall far outside town, as far from everything as she could get. 2 minutes away. 2 minutes. They felt like 2 lifetimes. Her heart pounded so loudly it seemed to drown out the street. Every passing car made her flinch. She stood close to the wall, eyes scanning the road constantly. Then a sleek black SUV pulled up exactly where the app had marked. No time to check the license plate, no courage to hesitate. Elena rushed forward, flung open the back door, and slipped inside like someone fleeing a storm. "Please, drive, just go," she gasped, heart slamming against her ribs. She hadn't even seen the driver clearly before the door slammed shut. The scent of real leather, expensive cologne, and chilled air conditioning hit her all at once. This didn't feel like any Uber she'd ever been in. Then came a deep, composed voice from the front seat. "Miss, I believe there's been a mistake." Elena froze. The man turned around. Sharp eyes, neatly combed dark hair, a gray tailored suit. Every detail screamed elegance and control. He wasn't a driver. He wasn't Uber. He wasn't someone she was supposed to sit beside. Panic rising, Elena grabbed for the door handle to jump out. But then, from the end of the street, voices shouted, "There! That's her! Victor!" Elena looked back and saw 2 men running, one of them unmistakably Victor's right-hand man. She whispered, almost broken, "Please, I beg you, just drive." Their eyes met in the rearview mirror. A brief pause. Then he gave a slight nod. Without another word, he shifted gears and pressed the gas. The SUV surged forward, cutting through the street like an arrow, leaving behind a trail of dust, footsteps, and one tattered wedding gown. Elena collapsed into the seat, breath hitching, tears falling silently. No one spoke. There was only the hum of the engine and the sound of a heart slowly being rescued. The SUV glided along the coastal road, gradually pulling away from the center of town and into a gated neighborhood overlooking the bay. Elena barely realized she had been silent the entire ride. She sat there, clutching the sweat-soaked, dusty wedding dress in her arms, occasionally glancing out the window, at a world still turning, unaware she had just done something irreversible. The man didn't ask a single question. He just drove, calmly, precisely, like someone used to holding it together while others were falling apart. When the car came to a stop in the underground garage of a high-rise facing the sea, he finally turned to her. His eyes weren't sharp now, but careful, measured. "My apartment is here. You need somewhere safe, right?" Elena didn't speak. She nodded slightly, still breathless. Inside the private elevator that led directly to the penthouse, Elena kept her gaze glued to the floor. Her once white gown was now stained and frayed, its hemline dragging traces of dirt and sand. Her legs bore tiny cuts, her hair a tangled mess, her makeup nearly vanished. She felt like a blemish in a space too pristine for someone like her. The apartment opened up into another world, floor-to-ceiling windows, polished wooden floors, and beyond them, the endless stretch of ocean. Elena froze in the doorway, almost afraid that just stepping inside might dirty the place. "I'm Liam Bennett," he said, taking off his jacket and hanging it neatly. "Elena, just Elena," she murmured, barely audible. "There's a bathroom down the hall. Fresh towels in the cabinet. I'll find something clean you can wear." She hesitated. "Why are you helping me?" Liam studied her for a moment, his eyes unreadable, not judging, not curious, just quiet. Then he said slowly, "Maybe because I once failed to save someone I loved, and today something in me said, not to make that mistake again." He didn't wait for a reply. Eleanor turned and walked toward the bathroom. Hot water cascaded over her skin, blending with tears she no longer tried to hold back. She scrubbed, not just to cleanse the dirt, but to erase the invisible stains Victor had left on her. The wedding dress slipped to the floor, limp, crumpled, lifeless, a final reminder of the future she had just escaped. When she stepped out, she found clean clothes laid out on the bed, a soft gray t-shirt, sweatpants, a pair of slightly too big men's slippers. Next to them, on a tray, sat a simple sandwich and a glass of orange juice. A small gesture, but one that hit her in the chest. Not because she was hungry, but because, for the first time in years, someone was treating her like a person. The next morning, sunlight slipped through thin curtains, painting the cream-colored ceiling with warmth. Elena woke up with an unfamiliar feeling. She was alive, and no one was yelling at her. Liam sat on the balcony, a mug of coffee in his hand, eyes fixed on the sea beyond. He wore a crisp white shirt and simple khaki pants, still polished, but somehow softer. "Good morning," he said, not too casual, not too formal. Elena nodded, accepting the glass of orange juice he offered. I think I should leave. I've imposed too much already." Liam paused, then asked gently, "Where would you go?" The question caught her off guard. She had no plan, no money, and no place Victor hadn't already touched. All she had was fear. And now, a strange sense of stillness within this apartment. "I know a place," he said eventually. "A nonprofit I've supported for a few years, teaches skills to kids and women in underserved communities. I think you might like it." That afternoon, they drove to the outskirts of the city, up a quiet hill where a modest two-story building stood. Its walls were hand-painted with colorful drawings made by children. A simple sign read, "Horizon Project." Inside, the space was buzzing with life. Coding classes, reading corners, and one small room filled with clay, pottery wheels, and shelves of half-finished pieces. It felt like another world, waiting to be touched. Liam led her into the pottery room and said softly, "We've never had anyone teach ceramics. If you're willing, this room is yours." Elena stepped toward the work table and rested her hands on a mound of soft clay. The texture brought back something she'd forgotten, a breath from a version of herself long buried. She pressed gently. Her palms trembled at first, but her fingers slowly steadied. A little girl, about 8 years old, peeked into the room, wide-eyed. "Are you going to teach us to make bowls?" Elena turned around. For the first time in weeks, a smile touched her lips. "If you want to learn, I'll teach you everything I know." And in that moment, she was no longer a runaway bride, no longer a victim. She was Elena, the artist, the guide, the woman who had just begun again. The days that followed passed like a fragile dream. Elena was slowly adjusting to her new rhythm at Horizon Project. She taught the children how to knead clay, shape their first handmade cups, and bit by bit she began to rebuild trust in herself. Every smile from the kids, every innocent question was like a healing balm she hadn't known she needed so badly. Liam kept his distance, never intruding. He watched from afar with quiet respect. Sometimes he joined meetings, occasionally dropped by the classroom with a casual question. They didn't speak much, but their eyes met more often. Silent check-ins that said, "I'm still here. Are you?" Then everything shattered on a rainy afternoon. Elena had just finished class and was cleaning the workshop when she heard voices, low, tense, coming from the front. A male voice, firm and impatient, was arguing with the receptionist. She stepped out and froze. "Tomas, one of Victor's most trusted men." "He's looking for me," she whispered, stepping backward, her entire body cold with fear. She ran to the break room, fingers trembling as she dialed Liam. Within minutes, he was there. They met at the rear exit. His jaw was tight, his eyes hard as stone. "He's gone. But he asked about a new woman teaching ceramics. He described you." Elena clung to the edge of a table to stay upright. How did he find me?" Liam watched her for a moment, then exhaled slowly. "Maybe someone saw us together the other day. Maybe they followed me, not you." Silence. Rain lashed against the windows, echoing the cruel truth. She had never really been safe. That night, Elena couldn't sleep. She lay curled on the couch, staring at the sea, her mind tangled in guilt. Had she been selfish to run? Was she just dragging her chaos into Liam's peaceful world? By morning, she was packing. Folding a few clothes into a small bag, she left a note. "Thank you for everything. I'm sorry. Don't come after me." But when she turned to leave, Liam was already at the door. "Where are you going?" She said nothing, just held out her phone. On the screen was a message from an unknown number, a photo of her mother standing outside their house with the words 48 hours. "He's found my last weakness," she said quietly. "I can't let her suffer because of me." Liam's eyes darkened. His voice was rough. "If you go back, he'll destroy you. This time, no one will be able to stop him." She looked up, eyes wet. "Then what do you expect me to do? Keep running? Rely on someone else's charity?" Liam didn't answer right away. He stepped closer, gaze burning. "It's not charity, Elena. It's a choice. And you don't have to fight this alone anymore." Elena sat still in the living room, her suitcase half-packed, the farewell note lying face down on the table. Liam sat across from her, his eyes never leaving hers. Outside, the rain hadn't stopped, its steady rhythm filling the silence like a sorrowful refrain. "You can't run forever, Elena," he said gently, "but you don't have to go back and sacrifice yourself either." "Then what?" she choked. "I'm not you. I don't have lawyers or contacts or power." Liam leaned back, quiet for a moment before he answered. "You have me." The simplicity of his words shattered the wall Elena had built between them. In that instant, she saw in his eyes not just kindness, but old pain, an unfulfilled promise to someone he had once loved and couldn't save. "He threatened my mother, Liam. I can't take that risk." "We'll get her to safety," he interrupted. He said "we" like there was no turning back. Liam started making calls, a string of conversations, full of coded phrases Elena couldn't understand, but she felt the determination in every word. The next morning, he gave her the news. "Your mother was taken out of town last night. She's safe, guarded, and she wants to see you." Elena broke down, tears flooding freely. "Is she angry?" No, she apologized. She said she hadn't seen things clearly until it was almost too late. Elena clutched his hand. I need to end this, not just for me, but for her, for others still trapped like I was. In the days that followed, they worked closely with a lawyer. Liam introduced her to Julia, a tough, sharp, but compassionate woman. Julia gathered documents, photos of past bruises, old texts, and testimonies from neighbors who had heard the fights. Elena told everything, from the first time Victor manipulated her to the last blow that made her collapse. She didn't flinch, didn't soften it. Every detail was a piece of truth. I'm ready to testify, she said, not just to accuse him, but to reclaim my own voice. When the court date was set, Elena sewed herself a pale blue outfit, modest, simple, perfectly fitted. It was a soft kind of armor, not for battle, but for standing tall and never bowing again. On the morning of the hearing, Liam took her hand before she stepped into the courtroom. No matter what happens in there, you've already won. You're not afraid of him anymore. Elena looked at him, steady and calm. I'm not afraid of myself anymore. The hearing ended late in the afternoon. The court granted the emergency protective order and announced an expanded investigation into Victor Silva's history of threats and domestic violence. As he was escorted out, his eyes met Elena's, not with anger or arrogance, but with the confusion of a man who had lost something he thought he owned forever. Outside, the sun had broken through. Elena looked up at the blue sky framed between tall buildings. It wasn't full freedom yet, but a door had opened, and this time she was the one who would decide whether to walk through it. Liam drove her back to the apartment, as always, but this time he didn't come in. Instead, he handed her a white envelope, placing it gently in her palm, his eyes holding hers. There's nothing in there but a few words. No pressure, no expectations. Elena nodded and stepped into the living room. The apartment was quiet, ocean breeze whispering against the glass. Inside the envelope was a note, handwritten in Liam's steady, careful script. You are free. If you choose to leave, I'll understand. If you choose to stay, I'll be here. She sat on the couch, letter in hand. Tears fell, not from pain, but from something pure, almost weightless. For the first time in her life, she had a real choice. 4 months later, Horizon Project now had a full ceramic studio. Elena coordinated the vocational program for women. Every day, she taught young mothers how to work with clay, shared techniques, listened to their stories, and sometimes just sat quietly, holding their hands as tears fell. She didn't need to become someone new, she just had to return to herself. That evening, after work, Liam waited beside an old pickup truck, no longer the sleek SUV, but a dusty, well-used vehicle. Still want to see San Vicente? He asked with a tilted smile. I do, she said, smiling. I want to see where you came from. They drove to the countryside where Liam had grown up, a small town shaded with green trees, his mother's house covered in cascading bougainvillea. She hugged Elena like she'd known her forever, joking that he had finally brought home someone who smiles with her eyes. That night, they sat on the porch, drinking tea, watching the sky fill with stars. Elena leaned into his shoulder, her hand finding his, not needing promises, not needing labels. Do you believe in destiny? Liam asked. She was quiet for a moment, then whispered, I believe in choice, and this time, my heart chose. The love between Elena and Liam didn't arrive in fireworks or declarations. It came like the ocean breeze, quiet, patient, slowly filling the spaces left hollow by the lives they once lived. There was no official day they started, but every small gesture, a touch over tea, a shared glance through the pottery studio window, a laugh while tying a child's apron, wrote a story that needed no title. Liam's mother, Rosa, was the first to notice. One morning, as Elena placed wildflowers into a ceramic vase she had made, Rosa smiled softly and said, You don't need to ask for my blessing, Elena. If you make him happy, then that's my answer. Elena blushed. But from that day on, something subtle shifted. The invisible line between her and Rosa faded. They cooked together, gardened together, laughed when Liam struggled to carry heavy pots. Alina had never felt like she belonged somewhere so fully, peaceful, without performing for acceptance. Her own mother, Lucia, took longer. But when Elena brought her to the Horizon Project, showed her the women learning, growing, changing their lives, something in Lucia's gaze softened. "You've built something beautiful," she said, her voice thick with emotion, "and if he helped you do that, then I'm grateful for him." From then on, they weren't just two people living together, they were building a life side by side. One sunny Sunday morning, Liam invited Elena for a walk along the beach. Nothing unusual, at least that's what she thought. They often walked the shoreline, hand in hand, talking about classes, about the little things. But that day felt different. Liam's fingers trembled slightly as they walked. He kept glancing at the horizon, as if weighing something heavy inside. Then he stopped at a windswept dune, where the waves hummed gently and no one else was around. He turned to her. No long speech, no grand performance, just the gentlest look she had ever seen in his eyes. "You once said, 'My heart chose.'" He knelt down, opening a small box. Inside wasn't a sparkling diamond, but a silver band etched with a ceramic design she had once taught the children to make. Elegant, simple, marked with their journey. "Today, I'm choosing you again, for always. Will you marry me?" Elena didn't answer immediately. Her eyes welled up as she placed her hand over her chest, where no cracks remained, only a steady, full rhythm. "I will, but this time I choose you first." And there, with the ocean as witness, they kissed, not as people escaping the past, but as two souls free at last, choosing each other, choosing love, choosing forever. She had run, barefoot, broken and breathless, but today she stood whole and she chose.